last we talked, many of the nations are working on CBDC projects. The Fed came out with FedNow, their instant payment platform, which is a platform that is just for instant fast payments. Right now, there's only a little more than 50 organizations that are participating in that. That's not the CBDC yet, but that's the foundation on which the CBDC will be built. So it's not enough that the central banks around the world want to control your money and be able to trace it and fully program what you can and cannot spend it on. The BIS came out with a report on June 20th, 2023. The BIS is the Bank of International Settlements. They are the central bank of the central banks. They came out with their annual report, and they released to the public one chapter of the report, and it's titled, "The Blueprint for the Monetary System, Improving the Old, Enabling the New." Now, this report reveals their plan for a global unified ledger and the tokenization of all privately held assets. So it's not enough that they want to control your money with a CBDC. They want to take all of our privately held assets, our car, our house, any securities that you own in your brokerage account, any stocks that you own in your brokerage account, any assets of any kind that you have, probably any pieces of art that you have either insured or registered with someone, any property that you register that you have that has value. They want to assign a digital token to that piece of property and store it on their unified global ledger, which will be fully traceable, fully programmable, and each token will be programmed and coded with smart contracts and rules and regulations and if-then rules as to how the object that the token is assigned to can be owned, transferred, probably rules for how you can retain ownership of that item in the real world will be coded into this token, so that anything that's transferred, any tokenized object for your deposits, tokenized assets, can be exchanged instantly on this global unified ledger, but also they will have full control of your assets. So this is how the World Economic Forum would accomplish its motto of, it's 2030, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. You may own some things, or you may think you own some things. They'll be tokenized on a unified ledger, but you won't control them. They will control the means by which you can keep your item, you can transfer your item. If just as with the CBDC, if they don't like what you're doing, if they don't like what you're posting on social media, if they have profiled you as a person that they don't like or they want to cancel, they can turn off your money. Imagine if they could turn off your assets. So from the report, I'll just quote a section of the report. The report explains the tokenization process as follows. The claims traded on programmable platforms are called tokens. Tokens are not merely digital entries in a database. Rather, they integrate the records of the underlying asset normally found in a traditional database with the rules and logic governing the transfer process for that asset. Hence, whereas in traditional systems, the rules governing the updating of asset ownership are usually common to all assets, tokens can be customized to meet specific user or regulatory requirements that apply to individual assets. So they can specialize the rules and specifically tailor them to that individual and program them into the digital token that would represent one of your assets. The ledger would dispense with messaging and the reliance on account managers to update records. It provides greater scope for composability, whereby several actions are bundled into one executable package, and it enables contingent performance of actions through smart contracts, i.e. logical statements such as if, then, or else. By combining composability and contingency, tokenization makes the conditional performance of actions more readily attainable, even quite complex ones, so that these transfers would be instant. So if you wanted to sell your house, it would be convenient in that you wouldn't go through the tedious documentation that you go through now with a normal closing. it would be done through executable smart contracts. As soon as you transfer the money, the smart contracts go into effect, and the asset can be transferred. That's very convenient, and that's how they'll sell this system, is that it will be so convenient that people may want it and get used to it. But the danger is that it's fully programmable, and they can program rules as to how you can retain ownership of your asset, or how you can or cannot transfer your asset, or they could just take ownership of your asset. They could just take it away from you if they wanted to through the tokenization on the unified ledger. So it truly is even way more control than the CBDC would be as a tool of totalitarian control. This would be government and central bank control, not only of your money, but of all of your assets, of all your valuables. You truly would be enslaved. The entire world would be enslaved by this. You couldn't say something that you don't like, that they don't like, do something that they don't like. They could cancel you and cancel all of your possessions too. And if you think I'm being maybe a little bit alarmist about this, there is a case. For instance, say you live in a smart home. One of the dangerous things you can have right now is a smart home, or a new car, because those are equipped with a lot of surveillance capabilities and remote control capabilities. But a smart home, that's one of the most dangerous things you can own right now. A man was locked out of his smart home for a week by Amazon, not even by a government, by a company, Amazon, after a delivery driver falsely accused the customer of hurling a racial slur at him during a delivery. The customer wasn't even home. His family wasn't even home. The Ring doorbell said, "Hello, can I help you?" or something to that effect. And the delivery driver misheard it, or assumed it was a racial slur, reported it to Amazon. And this man's home was controlled by Amazon devices. Amazon Echo, Alexa, all that stuff. Amazon locked him out of his home for a week, from May 25th to May 31st. And he was trying to resolve it with them. He sent them the footage. He said, I did not make a racial comment to this guy. This is a misunderstanding. Still, the company locked him out of his house for a week. Now imagine if the central bank has control over your assets because they've been tokenized on the unified ledger. And that token and the ledger can receive information from smart devices in your home as to how you're using the home, what you're saying in the home, what you're doing in the home. They could they could lock you out of your house. They could take ownership of your house. They could completely cancel your ownership of your house, because they would have full control on the unified ledger through this tokenization process. So it's really quite dangerous, and it's really a tool for totalitarian control. This would be global. The Bank of International Settlements envisions having a global unified ledger and tokenization of all privately held assets around the world. And they say that it could be accomplished with local unified ledgers, like your country, your central bank would have a unified ledger with tokenization, and that would communicate with the global unified ledger through APIs and such. But there would be one global ledger, and then possibly some domestic unified ledgers with tokenization of your assets that would communicate with the global one. The report states that the data environment of this unified ledger would encompass all the tokenized assets plus all information necessary to incorporate real-world events into any contingency performance of actions. That's a really broad statement. We can only assume that that means that the unified ledger wouldn't just store tokenized versions of every piece of your personal assets, every piece of your property, but every piece of information from real-world events could possibly impact your asset, or how it's classified, or how it's communicate with the token as to how you can use that asset going forward on the ledger. For instance, I heard an example of, with these cars, these new cars, they have a lot of surveillance capabilities. They can tell how fast you're going. They can report, perhaps if you're leasing this car and your contract says that if you're caught speeding, that your interest rate could raise and your monthly payment could go up. The information from the car could transmit that through APIs to the tokenized version of that car on the unified ledger, and then execute the smart contracts to, take more money out of your CBDC wallet, out of your account that would be, held with the central bank. So you could be deducted more money for that speeding, because the company leasing you the car would determine you possibly to be a risk at that point since you've been speeding. That's one use case I was thinking I had heard of and was thinking that's quite possible. There's also a portion of the report where they indicate that having such a global unified ledger, that they could prevent bank runs. If a bank was failing, right now, people who know about it beforehand will go out and take out their money, and maybe somebody who doesn't find out until later will get less than the money they had. So maybe they get 50 cents on the dollar instead of dollar for dollar. They could, in this way, they could give everyone the same haircut. They could deduct the same amount of money from every person's account because of that failing bank. And that would be obviously considered a bail-in of that bank, where every customer would suffer the same financial deduction because that bank failed. So there's a lot of dangers to this. There's a lot of ways this unified ledger of control this global unified ledger could control our lives and control our assets, take control away from us and give them to the central banks. And that's very dangerous. What can we do and how can we push back? Well, we can contact our elected officials, our state legislatures, and congresspeople and persons running for president, and let them know that we know about this, that we don't want this, that we do not want to subject ourselves to this level of control, and we won't tolerate it. And you can choose a bank that doesn't work with FedNow or any of these, these organizations that are trying to impose these control grids. But ultimately, the Bible predicts that this is going to happen. And the Bible has predicted that this is going to happen, that there's going to be a system of financial control over our financial lives, whereby we will not be able to buy or sell unless we have the mark of the beast. So the Bible's already predicted this. All we can do ultimately is to put our faith in God, keep His commandments, have the faith of Jesus, honor God in everything that we do, and not take the mark of the beast. And God will protect His people. I mean, we'll be in for some rough times, and obviously the system of financial repression will be in place because the Bible says it will be. But the point is that God is our ultimate protector, and He ultimately will provide for us and sustain us through these types of times of trouble. So what we need to do is put our faith in Him, ask for His presence in our lives, and, keep His commandments, and have faith in God and in Jesus, and that will ultimately protect us the most going forward.